The Golden Deception. The secret New England rush and the fortune that funded America. Forget the dusty trails of California. Forget the Yukon's frozen wastes. The most astonishing gold rush in American history didn't start under a scorching western sun, but in the frost-bitten hills of New England, hidden in plain sight, and orchestrated by a conspiracy that touched every founding father and secured the nation's future. You know the year 1849. You know the legend of Sutter's Mill, the dream of manifest destiny, the frantic scramble for riches in California. But what if that legendary gold rush was merely a smokescreen? What if, a decade earlier, a clandestine operation had already extracted vast fortunes from U.S. soil, not for individual prospectors, but for the very government struggling to finance its survival and expansion? This is the untold story of the Granite Vein, a network of secret mines in Vermont and New Hampshire, staffed by indentured European engineers and protected by private militias, extracting billions in modern value from an improbable source and channeling it directly into the nascent American industrial machine. It's a tale of brilliant deception, political ruthlessness, stolen technology, and the astonishing truth that the foundation of the American economy, the factories, the railroads, the banks, was laid not with Western grit, but with New England's hidden gold. The Panic of 1837 and the Desperate Gambit. The air in the White House Cabinet Room was thick with pipe smoke and desperation. It was May 1837, and President Martin Van Buren, successor to the formidable Andrew Jackson, was facing an economic collapse of catastrophic proportions. The Panic of 1837, triggered by speculative land bubbles and Jackson's controversial specie circular that demanded hard currency for public land, had brought the young United States to its knees. Banks were failing, businesses were shuttering, and a deep-seated fear was gripping the populace. The country, barely 50 years old, risked collapsing under its own debt. "Mr. Secretary," Van Buren said, gesturing toward the Treasury Secretary, Levi Woodbury, a man whose brow seemed permanently furrowed, "the coffers are empty. The states demand funds for infrastructure. The army needs materiel, and the international financiers in London are closing their books. We are a continental power with the financial stability of a village market." Woodbury pushed a heavy ledger across the table. "Sir, the problem is simple. We lack gold and silver reserves. We are too reliant on foreign loans and the shaky credit of state banks. To fund the expansion, the railroads that must cross the Alleghenies, the factories that must rise in Massachusetts, we need a massive, stable influx of specie. We need a bank of our own, independent of the states, and backed by a truly immense domestic reserve of gold." This was the crisis. Without gold, the United States was a hollow dream. Enter Dr. Elijah Thorne. Thorne was not a politician or a banker. He was a self-taught geologist and metallurgist, a reclusive academic from Yale who possessed two things: a fanatical belief in the untapped mineral wealth of North America, and a set of meticulously hand-drawn maps based on forgotten indigenous knowledge and early colonial surveys. A week after the meeting, Thorne was ushered into the president's private study. He laid his maps, brittle with age, on the desk. They didn't point to the deserts of the Southwest or the mountains of the Rockies. They focused squarely on the seemingly innocuous hard-scrabble region of New England, specifically a stretch of fractured quartz veins running through the Green Mountains of Vermont and the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Mr. President, Thorne began, his voice surprisingly firm, for over a century, explorers dismissed these veins. They found iron, copper, and granite, nothing more. But they were looking for placer gold, the easy-to-find river deposits. My analysis, utilizing techniques from Prussian and French mining schools, proves otherwise. This region, sir, is crisscrossed by mother lodes, not just trace amounts. I speak of lodes that could rival the Tsar's Ural mines. They are deep, they are hard to reach, and they require a monumental effort, but they are there. Thorne proposed a radical, audacious plan. It was a complete departure from the U.S. tradition of free enterprise and individual prospecting. His plan was a national secret. The operation must be entirely covert. Any public discovery would trigger a mass rush, leading to chaos, lack of quality control, and the gold falling into private hands, not the government's. The gold must be extracted by the state for the state. The industrial cover. The mining would be disguised as the establishment of large-scale granite and slate quarries, a booming industry in New England at the time. The gold-bearing rock would be mined alongside the ordinary stone. The labor force. Recruit hundreds of experienced, technically proficient miners and engineers from Europe, primarily the lead and silver miners of Cornwall and the metallurgists of Prussia, under strict, binding indentured contracts that guaranteed their silence and loyalty. They would be lured by high wages and the promise of land after a specified term, effectively held captive by their contract. The mint and logistics. The refining process would be conducted on-site in heavily fortified, isolated compounds. The resulting gold bars would be secretly transported to the Philadelphia Mint, unrecorded in public ledgers, and used as the unannounced backing for the nation's credit. Van Buren listened, not with disbelief, but with the cold, calculating desperation of a man who saw the only path to national solvency. This was not a question of morality, it was a matter of survival. The creation of a vast secret gold reserve would allow the Treasury to manipulate interest rates, underwrite massive projects like the Erie Canal and the emerging textile mills, and finally establish the U.S. dollar as a credible international currency, all without seeking a single cent from skeptical foreign powers. Dr. Thorne, the President said, rising from his chair, walking to the window that overlooked a capital in turmoil. You are proposing to create a shadow economy, a financial secret that must be held by less than 10 men until the country is secure. I am proposing to save the country, Mr. President, Thorne corrected gently. The California gold rush will be a chaotic free-for-all. This will be an organized national resource. It will fund the nation's industry, secure the banks, and enable the United States to purchase the territories needed to become a true global power. It will be the secret foundation of manifest destiny itself. Van Buren turned back, his expression grim and resolute. Then let us ensure that the granite of New England does not merely support our buildings, but supports the very future of the Republic. The greatest deception in American finance had just been launched. The great California gold rush was still 12 years away. The real gold rush, the secret one, had begun in the quiet forested hills of the East.
Gold-backed innovation. The direct pipeline of the secret gold into key U.S. industries. How unrecorded gold was used to finance Samuel Morse's telegraph system, fund the initial expansion of the Boston-based textile mills, and underwrite the construction of the critical early railroad lines, for example, the B&O Railroad. The direct link between granite vein gold and the rise of the industrial North. The Guardians and the Spies. The rise of a private security force, the Quarry Watchers, composed of veterans and mercenaries, whose sole purpose was enforcing the contracts and maintaining absolute secrecy. The occasional attempts by foreign agents, British and French intelligence, to ascertain the source of the U.S.'s sudden financial buoyancy. Life under the contract. A day in the life narrative of the indentured miners. The harsh, isolated conditions. The psychological toll of knowing they were producing massive wealth that they could not publicly share. The few carefully controlled attempts at escape and the brutal efficiency of their retrieval. Polk, Manifest Destiny, and the Mexican-American War. The strategic importance of the secret gold during James K. Polk's expansionist presidency. The gold reserves allow the U.S. to prosecute the war efficiently and finance the acquisition of vast new territory without crippling taxes or debt, shocking foreign observers who expected the U.S. to crumble under the cost. The unintentional discovery. Sutter's Mill, 1848. The true story of the California discovery. The cabinet's reaction to the news. The immediate realization that this public rush could serve as the ultimate, perfect camouflage for the secret New England operation. The government's propaganda machine. How the U.S. government actively encouraged the California gold rush, for example, President Polk's famous address to Congress, to divert attention, labor, and public focus entirely westward. The strategic benefit. Every prospector drawn to California was one less person who might stumble upon the secret in New England. The end of the vein. By the mid-1850s, the highest-grade New England lodes begin to thin out. The operation must be meticulously decommissioned, the slow, careful process of reverting the mines back into functioning granite quarries, removing all gold processing equipment. The challenge of managing the now freed indentured laborers. The Golden Ledger and Lincoln's Secret. The account of the Ghost Reserve. How this secret wealth was utilized by the Union during the Civil War. The gold's quiet role in financing the Union war machine, giving the North an unassailable financial advantage over the Confederacy. The story of Abraham Lincoln's quiet meeting with the last surviving member of the original Granite Vein Corporation. Fort Knox and the Final Burial. How the knowledge of the New England gold was slowly institutionalized and buried under layers of official classification. The theoretical link between the need for a non-transparent gold depository and the eventual creation of Fort Knox. The clues in the granite. Investigative focus on the residual evidence, strange property deeds, uncharacteristic railroad spurs leading to nowhere, and the unusual wealth explosion in seemingly random New England towns during the 1840s and 50s. The true foundation. A final calculation of the actual modern value of the gold extracted from the granite vein and its ultimate effect, securing the U.S. dollar, financing the Industrial Revolution, and enabling the country's rise to superpower status. Epilogue. The Quiet Hills. Visiting the sites today, a quiet New Hampshire quarry, a Vermont farm where the greatest financial secret in American history lies buried, waiting to be rediscovered by the modern reader.